Hello, everyone. I'm Angela Cote, proud leader of the amazing AC Inc. team, a team on a mission to maximize the impact of field support. And we're shaking things up today with a webinar again instead of a roundtable. We hosted a webinar a couple months ago, and we heard from three progressive franchisor CEOs about what's happening inside their brands since upgrading their franchisee support from a more traditional, operational, we're here for anything you need sort of approach to a true strategic growth focused coaching approach. And we heard about franchisee revenue increases, improved culture, and an overall ability to scale support. So we got to that. However, the webinar stirred up a bunch of great questions from the audience and the people in our network, including questions about what challenges these franchisors faced when they were bringing this new approach into their brands and how did they deal with them. So that's what we're going to get into today. Let's jump in and meet our guests of honor. We'll use this. We've got the screen up so you can see, but I'm gonna start with Rob. We'll go in order here. So Rob, if you can give a quick intro and tell your backstory before we get into things, that would be awesome.
Yeah, so Rob Flanagan, CEO of HoundsTown. And I think what I'd like to include as part of my intro is what Angela, you and I were talking about in the beginning, is that I came up as a field rep. So my first job in franchising was opening stores, looking at KPIs, taking those phone calls all the time, opening up stores on Christmas Eve sometimes. And why I love AC Inc. and even just being part of sharing my experience with it is really coming from that time period of being a field rep and understanding how challenging that seat can be. But that when you give them the tools, it becomes one of the most impactful parts of your franchise brand.
Love it. Yeah, when people have come up through that is so critical because you've really seen all those challenges and all, and you've lived and breathed them. So thank you for that, Rob. Let's go to Zach. We'll get your backstory and intro.
Hey, yes, my name is Zach Nolta, COO and a co-founder of Voda Restoration. Been in the franchise space for just over a decade, all within the home services space under a few different brands. And kind of one of our big main differentiators is ultimately the culture of the systems that we've created, but also creating like these very hyper-connected, very communicative franchise relationships. And so being able to leverage that with the coaching model here has been something that we've been able to differentiate with.
Awesome. Very good. Thomas.
Yeah, thanks. My name's Thomas Scott. I'm the founder of HomeRun Franchises, which is it's an umbrella company with the Lighting Squad, Up Closets, and Dryer Vent Superheroes. Kind of like Rob, my career in franchising goes back quite a bit, and I've been a multi-unit franchise owner in 5 brands. I've franchised several brands, been a supplier, but I've always thought, as I've spent most of my career on the development side, that the operations folks are the unsung heroes, and it's by far the weakest link in most growing systems, and that there's got to be a better way to like straighten that out and get better results for average owners to get them above average. And so I'm really a huge fan of what AC Inc.'s doing. We've certainly done a lot in our businesses with it.
Thank you. That's awesome. So let's take a quick minute then to just we if people haven't seen the part one of the webinar and want more clarity on all these things that we're going to be talking about, go check out part one. But in the meantime, let's just real quick, Rob, what was happening in your franchise company that made you say we need to like what were you trying to fix that led us to this awesome working relationship?
Yeah, I mean, where we were at the time, I think we were about 60 units. We're close to 100 now.
Yeah.
And what I was looking at for my seat was we were supporting franchisees very differently and using different KPIs. And that made my life really hard when I was looking at maybe a specific market or if a store was not growing as quickly as we had thought. I didn't know what the variable was. Was it the rep? Was it this? Was it the real estate? And so that really kind of started this initiative to systemize, which is what we're all doing a lot of here in franchising, how we supported franchisees. But what I was facing is that I kind of had an idea in my head of how to go do that, but I was very aware that it was going to take me a year and a half to build the spreadsheets, create the training program, get stuff out of my head. And then when I came across AC Inc., it perfectly aligned with my philosophy of franchising, which is it's relationship driven, not support driven. But then it was kind of from that perspective of who, not how. I can accelerate how I support my franchisees by bringing in this amazing platform, which honestly would have is much better than what I would have created. Trust me. And started instilling it with our operations teams and our field reps. And we started seeing immediate results, not just in unit economics, but within how our field reps are balancing their work-life balance, and in our franchise satisfaction scores that we do once a year.
Which, yeah, just music to our ears, because that was always the plan when we created what we created and set out to do this, is we want to see field team members being more empowered, more in control, feeling, having some boundaries, better culture, being able to measure things, having franchisees more satisfied. So awesome to hear all of that. Zach, what about you? What was happening in your system that made you think we need to fix something here?
Yeah, a little bit, it's slightly different story just in the fact that when we, in my previous experiences, we were very departmentalized in a lot of our coaching, and so like if marketing questions, they would go to marketing. So it's very much of a consultative type of coaching. And when we started Voda Cleaning and Restoration, we kind of went back to like, all right, if we wanted to scale a system, relatively quickly, but also make sure we're hyper focused on the overall support, how do we do so? So I sat down with our leadership team at the time, and similar to Rob, I was like, all right, I know what I need to build, but at the same time, there's this company called AC Inc. that has already done it before, and why would I try to reinvent the wheel? And so we partnered with AC like very early in our processes. We were probably open for a good like 6 to 8 months, but it was still enough time for us to get some good feedback that there was opportunities in our coaching to definitely like dive into and to structure a little bit more. And similar to like we leverage franchise business review to get those. And actually, one thing I haven't shared with you too is like we actually had a 36 point increase in our coaching, and it was right over the timeline of when we launched with AC into our last survey. So again, the overall structure was already built. I didn't have to recreate it, and we just kind of listened, learned, and implemented.
Oh, love that. Thomas, let's hear yours.
Yeah, I think, it's interesting because all three of us have pretty substantial experience in the
Yes.
trenches. Like none of us are newbies to franchising. My big issue is that you buy a franchise as a franchisee because it's this social network version of a business where there's relationship driven, there's support at all levels. But what I found in my systems, and we have multiple systems, so building ops teams is even harder when you try to do multiple things at the same time, is that I had a lot of silo effect going on where my marketing people were doing marketing stuff and my coaches were trying to coach and my trainers were trying to train, and they weren't always just connected. Like you were getting mixed signals and mixed advice. And what was really happening is we were getting heavy into just answering the same questions over and over and over and over. And we enabled our franchisees to just wear my staff out. Like they were just burned out. They were frustrated. They didn't know, no matter how much you could pay them, it
Mhm.
just wasn't fun for them. And then we kind of created these like franchisees who weren't doing critical thinking on their own part. And so when that happens, even though you're well intentioned, you lose the ability to kind of influence people to get to be self-sufficient. Like it sounds like a bad thing. Like I want you to be self-sufficient. I want you to master this business and be a competent business owner and do it with a lot of joy and fun and
Mhm.
work-life balance and all those things. And so, we didn't start with bad tools. Like our tools were like maybe
Yeah.
70% of where they needed to be. But man, just implementing the toolkit and training everybody. We certified everybody, and our whole everybody in the building's been through the class at this point. And it doesn't matter what you do, if you touch a franchisee, I want you to go through the certification class, and it's a huge investment. But we did our franchise business review for the first time with Driver Event Superheroes this year, and we got a 78, like our first pass, which for a 3-year-old brand is, you're always a little cringy when you're
Yeah,
like, oh,
nervous.
like really nervous, but it was, and they rated support and structure, and my coaches care about me, and it was like, it wasn't just a bunch of sympathizers, because you don't want franchise coaches that just sympathize. You need to be empathetic, but you want people who challenge you and go, well, do you really think that's the right idea? Like, what does that look like if you did some different stuff? And so, yeah, it's been tremendous turnaround. Certainly, definitely like huge ROI and same store sales increases and getting people to buy into systems without telling them to buy into systems, which is an amazing thing.
Yeah, it's a little sneaky, right?
It
But
is the
I love
Jedi
it.
mind trick. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
look, we just teach mind tricks.
Yeah,
That's really just
yeah,
all it is. We
yeah,
actually played them on all three of you. Just kidding.
yeah, yeah,
But I love what you're saying because um, Thomas, just mentioned something that's so important here is, we've done a lot of roundtables as well, and a lot of our clients talk about the problem of boundaries with where franchisees are, reaching out 24/7 to the coaches or even the home office team. And that I think there's a mindset that people have, and that oh my gosh, well, franchisees pay royalties. We need to be able to answer their questions. We need to be there for them, right all the time. And what you're saying, Thomas, what you just said is it's not about that. It's about empowering them to do what they so for their sake, right? Like what so that they are more independent and don't have to
yeah.
wait for you for the answer, right?
Well, just, because you have to have boundaries, and I get, we use Google
Healthy
Chat.
boundaries.
It's like a Slack type thing. So, we have chats going off 24/7, and my guys are answering the same question 27 times in a row sometimes. And it's a basic question that you should be able to answer yourself. And
Yeah.
just getting people to set boundaries on the staff side, but also like teach people how to, train them how to solve problems. Like it sounds like a really basic thing, but a big part of being a coach is just challenging people to do the work. So, like one of the big changes that you guys had us make, and it was a little counterintuitive for me, even the time I've spent in franchising, was that instead of just giving them the answers, like make them do homework, kind of like an LMS system, but a little more extreme. Say like, these are your assignments for this week. You're going to have to present on what you did before we get into the call on Fridays. We meet on Monday, then we meet on Friday. So they're coming to the class and they've done the 15 things, whereas we used to do like, okay, let's review the to-do list for this week at onboarding, for instance.
Yeah.
Yeah, did you do these things? Well, I did half of them and maybe not 40%. And then oh, let's talk about the 40%. Now it's like, okay, here's the video. You guys had us build these like really intricate, like, here's why this is important. Here's how you do it. Here's examples. Here's where all the resources are. Do this. You're going to have to stand up and give a presentation in front of your peer group,
Mhm.
which is something you guys also had us do. I think that's a big part of it is when you get into a one-on-one relationship and your coaches are doing one-on-one goal setting and review meetings.
Mhm.
That's just horrible for franchise relationship stuff because there's no, like, they can abuse the coach and take all their frustration out on the coach. You put them in a peer group, which is what you had us move. All of our coaching is done in peer groups now. We have very little one-on-one. Then the other franchisees in the group will jump in and say, "Well, you just got that wrong. What are you slow? Like, like, like this, and it's a funny dynamic, and so that it relieves this tremendous burden on the coaches. And then I have happy coaches who put in the extra effort and get excited about helping people grow and celebrating wins. It's kind of a magical thing. Like it sounds, but it just, if everybody did some version of the toolbox in franchising, we'd have a ton less litigation. We'd have much more successful owners because you get to that month five, six, or seven, and that kind of dip in the emotions and psychology when people are the hardest, and that's when they fall out in a service brand. I don't know, but brick and mortar is different, but I think Zach and I kind of deal with some of the same issues where service is just you have to hustle a lot in the first year.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. Lots of good stuff there. I'm gonna shift gears a little bit to Rob. You find this solution, and I picture, you're like you're enthusiastic. You're the CEO. You're visionary. You're like, I know we need this. This is gonna fix things, right? You can see it. And you come in with this enthusiasm and vigor, and you come back to the team and you hit resistance. I don't even have to guess. I know this happens. So can you talk about, because you and I even talked a little bit about how people said, well, what we're doing is good enough. We're busy, we have 10 initiatives going on. It's fine, we don't need to do this. So talk a little bit about that, and how then eventually, like, how do you deal with that resistance? Because you eventually did overcome it. Obviously, you got people on board.
Yeah, I think what it comes down to, and I doesn't always work this way, but ideally, anything we're doing, I want people to want to do it.
Yeah.
I don't want it to be, well, Rob said we have to go do it
Hmm.
because it inevitably doesn't go as well. There's resistance, it's
Well,
clunky,
and
it
it's your
doesn't,
fault then if it doesn't work, right?
well, everything is my fault.
It is anyway.
But what I really liked what Thomas said, and I would agree, kind of applied to us. We were like 75% of the way there.
Yeah.
And so initially when we were talking about it, and I wouldn't call it resistance, but there was kind of a trepidation around
Okay.
it. How much is this going to be? What's it cost?
Mhm.
Um, is this the priority we should take on when we have 14 other things that are more concrete?
Mhm.
This initiative is going to raise sales or profitability, and this is not as much of a direct ROI. So there was this kind of a trepidation around it. And what I was able to kind of show working with you and then working with FBR was like, hey, look at these brands that we're aspiring to be.
Mhm.
All these brands that we aspire to be are in the FBR top 50.
Just for clarification,
Franchise Business Review.
yeah, anybody that's listening, that means that's the company that does surveying of your franchisees, their satisfaction. So when we say FBR, we're talking about Franchise Business Review. Give them a plug.
Yeah.
They're awesome.
Yeah. Michelle's going to appreciate that we
Yeah.
clarified that for
Maybe
sure.
you'll get like a free survey or something.
Yeah, that'd be
Yeah.
great. And so that's something we're on EOS. We put that on our 3-year picture.
Yeah.
So in 3 years, we're not there, but we want to be in the Franchise Business Review top 50.
Okay.
And then when we started working backwards as a team, not just me pushing it, was like, well, how do we get there? And the question was, well, is doing our franchise support at 70% going to get us to this goal?
Mm.
And no, there's no way. You're not going to be able to achieve that goal without taking your franchise support infrastructure into the 90-95%. So that created the alignment around the entire team, the leadership team, myself, of saying, okay, now what's the most economical and efficient way to put this program in place? And that tied into the who, not how, and then bringing AC Inc. in to accelerate that initiative.
Oh, love that. And what's the line you've said about as a recovering operations person?
Well, there's probably a lot of ops people on this call, so I don't want to hurt any feelings.
Yeah, you're just making
But
sure they know
I'm
you.
a recovering operations person. So I came up as a field rep and a director of ops, a director of training, VP of ops, COO, all the good stuff. And I love ops. It's in my blood. It's a backbone of everything we do. But I know for myself when I was in ops, I could be a bit of a fuddy-duddy. You get so oriented in the numbers and the system, and how do you open a store, and how do you train on how to do these things, and how do you operate the business,
Yeah.
that you sometimes can lose sight of the heart and the relationship.
Mhm.
And I think that was a little bit of the trepidation, is because, especially as a smaller brand, there could be this feeling that you're learning to fly the plane while you're flying it.
Mhm.
And when you're in that energetic mindset, it's harder to think about the solution of what you needed to do. But when we kind of put it as our 3-year picture
Mhm.
and started asking the right questions, then it was an easy flow into how do we kind of put this program in place.
Yeah, so it was about that whole what's the goal we're trying to get to, and then tying it to that, which is what the strategic growth coaching framework is all about with franchisees. So that's really cool that you're doing that. Thomas, what about you? Did you have franchisees resisting or team members that resisted or, said, oh, we don't really need this, we're fine, we're too busy, or coaching is for underperformers?
Yeah, I
Anything?
mean, I think we didn't have any resistance from, and it's all just the way you communicate from franchisees, like more equals more. And that when it comes to,
Okay.
even if you don't jump in and participate, people get excited about it. We had a good strategy. I think where I had resistance, ironically, was internally. I think some people, you pull them out of a silo and you make them work on a team and there's a coordinated effort. We're trying to do the same structure across three brands, so that's a little more complicated. But I would have people get a little pushback. They might get resistant, like, oh, I've got all this effort built into this tool that I made and I want to use this and I want to let go of that. It's important to me. And then they've got a success strategy tied to the way they use that tool, which is valid, like, because it works in some situations, doesn't work in others. And so we're trying to get a uniform tool set with you guys. And I think the certification class is what kind of helped on that front. Like if people going through the class and go, okay, I get what we're trying to accomplish big picture,
Mhm.
which is what I think most ops people really miss because I think you can hire operations people from other brands, like a lot of new franchisors do. And it's really hard. Like they have their own way of doing things. It may not be consistent with your culture. Their tools may or may not work, or if it kind of have the structure there to teach things, coach people, get them through the curve. So yeah, I found we had a little more internal resistance to it. It wasn't hard to overcome. Just that kind of surprised me a little bit. Like, because you're the leader, you're like, yeah, shiny new, fun, more profitable
Yeah,
thing.
once again, Thomas wants
Yeah,
to do another thing,
yeah, and it's
right?
like they're like, oh, hold the brakes there, buddy. Like
Yeah.
it's kind of what Rob was saying. He's saying the same
Yeah.
thing.
So,
I think there's so much to what Thomas is saying there that just to kind of pull out slightly and
yeah.
really make it pop because it applied to us. Again, recovering ops guy. We're ops people. We're notorious for taking the data and then building our own spreadsheets.
Mm.
Right.
We
Same, exactly.
like
Yeah.
we like our charts and our own colors. And
Yeah.
it was the same thing here. So we'd have one rep with this report with the data and another. And a big part of AC Inc. was like really helping us come together and say, hey, we get it, but this is what we use for every franchisee. Hey, behind the scenes, if you want to go do something with your colors, have at it.
Mm.
But across the board, a 10-year store to a store that's been open 3 months, whatever it is, this is the program. And on paper, you're like, what's that big deal? It was massive because we weren't looking at the right data across the system. We were looking at different interpretations of different data.
Yeah, which makes it really hard to tell if it's even real, right? So, and I think Thomas, for you too, it was like, okay, let's put one person in the field coach certification or otherwise known as the accelerator, right? And then people started to see what
Yeah,
people
like
they
we put the two youngest people I have on staff who had the least experiences in franchise operations. They were,
they were probably willing to do it because they
they
knew.
were we voluntold. Like
Yeah.
that didn't really enter into the equation. Like it
Yeah.
wasn't a opt-in kind of thing. But they were also really enthusiastic about it. And so I said, look, I want to try this. I want to see how it goes with you two. And the transformation I got out of those two team players, one's a franchise admin, one's a franchise coach, now kind of leading a brand, was like night and day. And, being able to, they'd come back with the right language. They would say, oh, well, we need to present data and we need to kind of, standardize our KPIs and we need to all use the same toolkit. And they're saying the stuff Rob's saying, from the lowest rung people I had in the organization at the time. It was a tremendous thing, and they both work on the dryer vent brand for us. So what I found is every successive class they coach, every time we get it, we do a training class every other month. Like they keep elevating up. My new people now using the toolkit a year later are ramping up twice as fast and doing three times the revenue and twice the profitability. Like it's a ridiculous KPI. And so based on the early stuff, we started enthusiastically encouraging people to get into it. I think we got one person holding out that's dragging their feet, but for the most part, I think and any new person I would put into that class. But I
Yeah.
think for us, it wasn't that you couldn't explain logically the toolkit and understand the sheets and explain the agenda for a coaching call and the kind of cadence for it. It was that that 6 month class is a pretty substantial amount of contextual, like, why am I here and why am I doing this? And what's going on with the franchisee? Why are they pushing back so hard?
Mhm.
And it kind of melted away some of the stuff that, what they're complaining about isn't really the issue. It's this other thing that as a coach, you have to hold them accountable for and be nice about it, be empathetic and use soft skills. Like they just figured it out. And so, man, it's amazing. Like that, we created a bunch of little Energizer buddies on the ops team. I do think that as a franchisor, it allows you to recruit and train and develop your own talent. Find somebody with the raw skills, but maybe without the 10 years of experience and get them very effective in field coaching, even if they haven't been a Rob or a Zach and done decades of, operations stuff.
Yeah, I love that. Well, maybe come
Just
back to that. Yeah, go ahead,
just
Zach.
one, just one quick thing to kind of pressure test some of the coaches, and if you are getting resistance, would be to ask questions around, what is the commitment to your meetings? Are people showing up? Do you spend half your time talking about their issues instead of strategic parts of the business? Do you find that you're getting resistance on a lot of the programs that the franchisor level that you're initiating? And if you're starting to kind of say like, yeah, like I can't get anybody to get up, all I'm doing is talking about their issues, and that's a lot of my coaching. I think there's an opportunity for us to kind of sit back and say, hey, there's a better way to actually coach these franchise partners instead of just pushing the same initiatives that we have been.
I
So
love
kind
that.
of some little pressure testing around some
Well, you're
questions.
kind of coaching them a little bit to realize it. So like you're using it
Exactly.
as a coaching approach by asking them that, like, hey, how is it going? And then making them realize, oh yeah,
Mhm.
I could maybe use some help.
Maybe it's not going that great.
Yeah. So Zach, actually that's perfect because I was going to ask you next, to talk a little bit about, you guys went all in on, strategic growth coaching, certifying team members. Actually, the first thing I want to talk about is restoration, and I know that's one of the businesses out there that your team, or franchisees definitely do need a lot of technical support, like operational running, like running the business in the business support. And you had people who were those kind of people. Tell us about, like, were you able to have them come around and become business coaches? How's that going? I know all of this is a process. It doesn't happen overnight. So talk a little bit about that and or any resistance that you've had.
Yeah, yeah. And then just when we worked with AC, there's one thing that Jen told us over and over. It's like everybody thinks that they need to have someone specific to their industry. And so we did at the time because we were a very young franchise and everybody was in their first 3 months of operating their business and it was very operationally kind of focused. So our coaches naturally then were answering all these questions about how to do the work, how to focus within the customer experience, really kind of operational types of questions. And what we found is that we never could get that owner to never really get their mindset away from the operations to really start thinking more strategically. And so we layered on AC to help get our coaches to start seeing a little bit bigger picture. Let's start having these strategic conversations earlier with the business because at some point it's hard to get them back. It's hard to get them back to thinking about the strategic parts of building a business. And so it wasn't so much for us. Yes, the coaching helped, but it was the support from AC to be able to say, you need to build the infrastructure around the coaching to support the coaches. And so in this whole like puzzle of operational support, we put the franchise coaches at the very center. And every single piece around them, from onboarding to grouping our calls to the marketing side of things, it all funneled into coaching to allow the coaches to have more strategic conversations. And so we changed things on our onboarding to get them more education around the operational pieces. We started kind of grouping our training classes together, and then also then carrying that to post-training calls. And those post-training calls are more operationally focused, and they're focusing on, how do I, clean a carpet or do a water mitigation job, and all those guys can bounce ideas around each other. But it left the once a week, bi-weekly, or monthly actual coaching calls to focus on the actual business and to strategically focus on it. And so for us, again, it was all the pieces around it that AC was really helping us realize that we needed more so than on the actual coaches themselves. Um, I hope to answer the kind of
Yeah.
question there.
Well, and then also, another one of the things that we hear, I talked about like different types of resistance you might get hit with or pushback or whatever. Um, But also one of the things we hear is like franchise support isn't cookie cutter. You
Oh,
can't just, and so like, does a framework mean that for one thing, it's a cookie cutter approach, and then also for your brand? So Zach, I'll just stay with you for a minute because I know
yeah.
all of you have done this, but I know just we talked about some of the customization that you've taken, the strategic growth coaching framework and the toolkit that comes with it. And
Mhm.
how can you talk a little bit about how you've customized and adapted that to your brand and your
Yeah.
franchisees?
So we added a number of different tabs to it, but we've also incorporated that growth coaching guide all the way up into like our very first call with a franchise owner. So they sign the franchise agreement, they have a welcome call, and then the next meeting is that we introduce the growth coaching guide. In that growth coaching guide, then that's where we're getting their goals. When they're the most excited about being a part of the franchise and they have all these big goals and BHAG that we always talk about. Like those are the types of things that we want them to hold on to this and we want them to tell us those things. Now it does two things. It gets them to verbalize us from a visual standpoint, like what their business looks like in their mind, so that we can kind of cater our goals and our growth guide around what their goals are. But it also allows us to then hold them more accountable later on in the process. So then in the onboarding processes, when they're starting to kind of, divert a different direction or they get distracted, or I'll do that when I'm open my business. It's like, no, you said that you wanted to be this type of owner. This is what this type of owner does. They go out and they network. You said you're going to network with 20 people. You wrote that in your BHAG. You're not doing it. And so all those types of things, it allows us not only just in the coaching, but also in onboarding to set the stage for when we make that transition from onboarding into our coaching. That the foundation's already laid. Like they've been beaten up already that well, I'm going to follow this plan. And so at that point, the success coaches aren't selling anything. They're just doing exactly what they've been taught the second they got into our system.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, Thomas, you want to add something?
Yeah, it's a really good point Zach made about whether do you have to have a technical person or not. And I think we kind of approach it from like we divide product support, like technical training, product support is handled outside of franchise business coaching for us. So the franchise business coaches coach you on how to run a business, how to solve problems, how to become a leader, how to manage a P&L, how to do your marketing, like a business, like how do you become a self-sufficient kind of critical thinking, kind of high performance owner. And then we have different staff that also go through the certification that do straight up technical support. And the coaching is helpful for those people like how do you install dryer vents? What are the codes? Like how do you install closets? I need like a sales coach for we have very specific things in our industries that we have to train on
Mhm.
and provide support. And it's not realistic that a generic business coach is going to know 10 years of industry information. So splitting it up that way makes it a lot easier. The advantage of taking a technical trainer through the course, even though they're not using the toolkit, is that it just trains them to be more of less of a consultant, more of a coach. Well, like,
Mhm.
oh, you're in this closet and it doesn't fit, and you measured 3 inches long. Like, what are your options? Tell me what your plan is. It's kind of, I found that even with those people who are generally answering a lot of similar questions, like they're able to get people to even, and not just the franchisees, they're dealing sometimes with salespeople and installers, with technicians. I don't know, Zach, if you kind of have that issue, but I found it's you can have a lot fewer technical trainers if you're franchise business coaching on a larger scale. And that's a much more efficient way to organize, at least a service business.
Yeah, yeah. I do find that like with where we're at in our business kind of growth that it does make sense that we have the technical expertise. And if I have someone that loves the brand, loves the industry, they're very passionate about it, and they can help out in the technical, but then they also have the intangibles to be the coach that has empathy, can listen.
Right.
It's easier for me to then train that person to be a better coach than it was to teach the technical side. But I do see that as we continue to grow and we get businesses that are in the system for 4, 5, 6 years, their needs are completely different. They don't need the technical. And so to have someone that's so technically focused at that point, it just doesn't make sense. I need someone to have that business mindset. And that's how I think that you take your coaching from 50 to 100 and as a young system, and that's where you continue to scale is through more of that business coaching.
Yeah, I'm going to come back. I'm still planning on coming back to Thomas's point about the other team members getting the certification. I really that's in all of this. But one thing I wanted to just check in on also, I'm going to ask you, Rob. is does a franchisee, like some people think that a franchisee, once they know how to run the business, they don't need coaching anymore. Like, why would they need coaching? Like Zach's face right now, if you're
Yeah.
watching us. No, I'm not kidding. We hear this. People are like,
Yeah.
what?
Hear it
So
all the time.
first thing
Yeah.
that goes through my head is they don't understand what coaching is if that's what they think. But Rob, I'll pick on you to answer this. Like a franchisee past 6 months that, they know how to run their Houndstown location. Do they need coaching still? Business coaching?
Yeah, I think a lot of the answer to that question really goes to what Zach and Thomas were saying is if you start, I mean, really agreement signing before they've even opened with the coaching framework,
Hmm.
what I find it just becomes something that carries on through the tenure of the time you're working with them.
Yeah.
We did run into that here because we had a whole bunch of franchisees that have been up and operating. One of them was open 10 years when I joined.
Yeah. Right.
And so, yes, trying to bring in the coaching framework to what I call as the old guard is
Yeah.
a different rollout process for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Because they're making money and they're good and they're not always motivated by shaving 1% off their P&L statement so they can make a little bit more, you know.
Hmm.
But it kind of goes to the question 2 questions ago is about like that framework and the difference. When I literally used the cookie cutter analogy,
Hmm.
but what I said was it's hey, we're making the same cookie base, but everybody gets to decorate the cookie the way you want to decorate the cookie.
Ooh,
But what I need is to make sure that every cookie looks like a Christmas tree, whatever it is.
right.
And we use that framework with the old guard as we're trying to kind of instill that in with them some more. And we are using an approach that a lot of us all kind of know. We identified some folks that were more less resistant.
More open to,
You kind of follow the diffusion of change, get the early adopters behind it, put them in front of your reunion and say, hey, I started doing it, it's really great.
mhm.
And we haven't done this yet, but I envision a day where with our peer groups, we have even some of our peer mentor franchisees going through a similar type of training that helps them because they love mentoring the younger
Yeah.
franchisees.
Yeah.
So all that kind of just ties together. Um,
Mm.
but once in my experience, if you start them off with the coaching framework, the they want it. We have not heard one franchisee come to us and say, oh,
I don't need
that's it. No. The only thing we have a coach that's kind of for younger stores, and then we have a coach for older, more mature stores.
Mhm.
But the framework's all the same, and everybody's like, "Oh, great! I don't want this to end. Please don't let this end. I want to keep making sure I have this in place."
Yeah, I mean, we always say that like high performers, like Oprah Winfrey has coaches. Tiger Woods had his coaches. I should probably get some updated names. Those are getting old, but but the point is that high performers understand that they need coaching and correction and things to help them stay on track. So I definitely agree, and I think we all agree here on that. But I think that people need to think more about that if they think that high performers or legacy franchisees don't need it. Myself as a franchisee, I this big reason why AC exists. I would have loved to have proper business coaching. I didn't need help running my business. I knew how to do that with my eyes closed, but proper business coaching is what I needed. I want to, so now I'm going to go back to, so this is a question for Thomas, but Rob's key takeaway from the last webinar was the idea of you had said that Thomas, the fact that he was making everybody on the team take the certification,
Well,
right?
I should be clear. My key takeaway on any roundtable is how do I do things more like Thomas? So
And I want to be Rob when
that's
I
just
grow
my standard
up.
key takeaway.
So you heard Thomas and you're like, okay, I have to do everything he says.
Thomas is doing it, must be smart. I'm gonna
Yeah.
go.
Well, and I say the same thing. I just want to be Rob when I grow up.
Yeah. No, Zach, we don't know where you fit in. You have to come to more roundtables so you can get in on that.
Look, I'm a
Okay.
big fan of R&D, rip off and duplicate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I hear Thomas and other folks are doing something. Yeah, my brain starts spinning. And it's like,
But
oh, that's a
that's
great idea. I should go do that.
really that's the core point on why a top performer, a long tenured franchisee benefits from coaching. Like that's what they get out of it. It's not just the how do I grow? It's the like that like mastermind group of with similar peers where you kind of make the brand better. Like it's pretty cool. Like I think it's
Mhm.
really important to do that for sure. Like I find people that are longer tenured get a lot more out of it or are easier to get into peer. We do peer groups, but
Mhm.
we don't do one-on-one coaching at that point, but
Yeah.
they're all about the peer groups.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to come back to or come in a minute to there's a question in the chat. That's a good one. So if you guys can see it, just read it and get ready to answer that. But just to finish this point, Thomas, so, you mentioned this on the last webinar, you mentioned it again today that you have your whole team, and anybody that comes into your brand, they have to take the certification. You also mentioned that, that it solves a problem of not having to necessarily find somebody that's already in franchising, but rather look for somebody with the right DNA and the right raw talent that you can then groom, which is great. But what's funny about you saying that is I'm going to let the cat out of the bag. I don't know if anyone on my team's listening and can get mad at me, but all of a sudden it goes dark, right? But the cat out
Sure.
of the bag is something we've been working on, is actually that before you even said it, Thomas, is that we really believe that everybody in your franchise system needs to know when a franchisee asks a question and maybe they push back on something or they're negative or they disengage and they don't respond. How do you deal with that, right? So this goes back to my own upbringing and background, and I think about what did my dad and company do right that helped us grow to almost 500 locations, and it was understanding the franchisee franchisor relationship, and that even the person in the accounting department, especially the people in the marketing department, because that's a big pain point for franchisees, person in the construction department in our case, understood how to talk to franchisees. And so that's a direction we're definitely going. And I love, Thomas, that you have figured that out on your own, that there's value in that. Can you speak a little bit to that? Like
Yeah.
how do
Yeah.
you
I mean, I think that what it takes to be a highly effective business coach and like what is that? What does that mean? It doesn't mean just that you can drive sales. It means that you create happy franchisees who love their businesses, who enjoy operating their businesses and can grow at the pace they want to grow and have the support and structure they do, and they become self-sufficient at some point. Like so it's as a leader, to have a whole staff of people who speak the same language and see the problem and solve the problem in a consistent way, whether it's an admin dealing with the CRM, who is somebody that probably gets bricks thrown at him all day
yeah.
long.
Oh
Zach,
yeah.
my workies guy in staff, we have a dedicated workies guy. He gets bricks thrown at him all the time.
Yeah.
And great software, like hard to support sometimes, like any CRM would be.
Yeah.
But for him to be able to go, okay, wait, I need to like all this negativity isn't really the issue. Like there's training I have that I can come back and say, well, like show me what you're doing and how are you trying to solve it and what are you actually trying to do with that? And I think that's a pretty amazing thing when you have problem solving at the staff level on all of your silos and they're
Yeah.
less siloed. And then you have much more consistent outcomes. I would say if we did anything, we're repeating the same messages and we're all on the same team, even though we're not meeting together. So our in-house meetings went down. We don't meet as much as a group,
Mm,
and it seems just a lot more predictable. And we were just looking at curves of our predictable revenue curves. It's like how do people ramp up? And it's gotten more consistent. Like
mhm.
before, I'd have like most of the people hit the curve, and then outliers go up or what. Now everybody's kind of on the same thing. It kind of
The
gets to what I'm
franchisees when they
saying,
start.
starting the toolkit and having the people that first touch the franchisee in onboarding, virtual training, jumpstart training, coaching for us, the first 6 months, like all of those are so important, and you can really train the franchisee better. And it is really counterintuitive. It's hard. Like it's
Mm.
like of all the things in franchising, the ops people have the hardest job. That's why I've never been one. I'm always a marketing person or a salesperson or I do all the fun stuff and
See, I should have been more like Thomas.
Yeah.
right. On that point, you should have been. Yeah, I would agree. Max knows better. Yeah, he's stuck in
Uh,
the
Well,
but
no, I
Yeah,
think,
good
and
question.
I'm not looking at the
yeah,
anybody that's on it, but I guarantee everybody that's on here, if you've been that field rep, I mean, this is what drove it for me. Was opening a store in a mall in Naples, Florida, and I'd been working 15-hour days. I was starving, and I had to get lunch at a hot dog on a stick in a mall food court, which is just a miserable experience in general. And I got four phone calls while I'm trying to open a store. Somebody's point of sale machine went down. Somebody didn't know how to find a document. Somebody had an employee show up that had been drinking and they didn't know what they could do about it. This was all before the joint employer brouhaha. And I just remember sitting there with this damn, excuse my language, hot dog on a stick and a lemonade, and like my life stinks.
Hmm.
Like I don't know how to solve any of this.
Hmm.
That's at the core of what AC does is that it creates that infrastructure for your field reps who we all recognize are the most important of
Hmm.
anything that we do. So they don't have that experience I do. I can't even eat a hot dog anymore. I'm traumatized. Don't let your field reps dislike hot dogs.
That's the key
That's the
takeaway
take.
for everybody. But you know what? Yeah, it's well, again, is all driven because I have PTSD from being in the field. Hey, you go do this. I knew the brand inside out because I grew up with it, but nobody taught me what do you do when you show up and it's a husband and wife franchise couple and they've invested their life savings, $400,000. They've been open 2 months and they can't make payroll already. And I'm supposed to go in and tell them that they have to put in a $40,000 product order. Like, teach me that, please, because I didn't know how to do it, and I didn't get hot dog. I don't have hot dog trauma, but I did get like practically locked in the walk-in freezer a few times. So, I feel your pain, Rob. Let's go to the questions. There's a couple of questions in the Q&A here. Zach, I'll go to you because I'm trying to kind of go all around. Oh yeah, Jenna's on here. What are you doing? I thought about you, Jenna. She threw in about the franchisee throwing bread. Yeah, she's got a great story. She had a franchisee throw bread at her. I think it was Quiznos there. So, okay. So, what percentage of franchisees show up to your coaching calls in your system? So, I guess we'll answer this however you guys each think. Zach, do you want to answer? Starting with you.
Yeah, I wish I had like a hard number that I could pull as quickly, just kind of see, especially the based around like the actual strategic coaching calls that we do have and that are not operations related. What is the percentage? I would say that ours is relatively low just because of the nature of the business that we're in. It's emergency restoration, and so all of a sudden those calls get kind of pulled away or whatever else. But in general, we have an 87% active community. So whether it's like the team's calls involved in the community and whatever else or our community that we've created, it's relatively high, and there is a lot of importance that's placed again from day one that those coaching calls that are pre-scheduled are super important. And just off the top of my head, we don't have a lot of cancellations on those calls specifically because of the strategic nature of them.
We track it on our scorecard. Don't hold me to the number. I'm not looking at it, but I want to say it's in that 93%. We weren't tracking it before, but I can subjectively say it was one of the biggest challenges was like they didn't show up for the call, they didn't show up for the call. Da, 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 da. Now they're showing up for the calls, they're prepared for the calls. The calls are productive. You can have a phone call and it can be worthless. And that was all tied to that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It is a bit of a loaded question. I mean, there is obviously a percentage you can get to, but it's a bit of a loaded question because if we're calling it definitely coaching calls only, and if not all franchisees might have accepted coaching, and they might say, "I don't want coaching, I just want hotline support." So there's other factors, but I guess the question I would ask is, has it gone up? Yeah, Rob, has it?
Dramatically.
Look at everybody's right away going like that.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was a
Yeah,
little
I think for people that we start out with the, post conversion of the system we're using, those people get into it. They're in meetings every week for the first 6 months, and then they get into bi-monthly things, and they stick with them. Like I have pretty kind of Rob's level of turnout for those. They're all peer group stuff. For the people that were before that were on a different mentality, it's a lot harder to get those people in. Like that, it's a much lower percentage thing. And so the people that are in the groups magically do twice the sales. It's like a night and day difference, and they have better relationships. They're happy. They're buying more territory. The people that don't to go to coaching sometimes are the ones that are kind of lower in the struggle bar. And I think somebody asked the question like, "Have you have any hesitation around peer group coaching?" We're really adamant, and we've started in the sales process. We're a fully transparent system. We share all numbers. We share all marketing spends, all results. Like you can see, anybody can see what all their neighbors are doing, financials, everything. Like we just believe in we'd say that's just a cultural thing for us. Like you're going to have to get used to it. You're going to get in a peer group. Like this isn't a business you're running by yourself in the barn somewhere in the
You
corner.
became
Like
a franchisee, so
yeah,
we're
this
gonna help
is
you
a team
learn.
sport, and we're in the same jersey, and we're gonna win we're gonna win. We play to win. Like that's what
Yeah.
we're at. So
I was gonna say the same thing as Angela's. Like you bought into a franchise because of the idea that you're buying into a community, and we again from day one we try to batch all of our training groups together so that they're on the same calls, or on the same marketing calls, or on the same whatever. So by the end of their training, and they go to the same training together, by the end of the training, they've already developed this huge sense of community, and then we just keep in trying to find ways to enhance that throughout the lifelong of them being a system. And the ones that engage the most in those communities, the ones that really buy into that, they're ultimately the most successful and most happy because they have a way to kind of have other outlets to talk about, certain issues, and they can talk about, their wins with other ones, and they have each other cheering each other on. And again, it all is there to support and enhance ultimately the most important discussion, which is around the strategic growth coaching. And so the more you can lean into peer groups, the better.
yeah, and we call our first 4 months, we call them a jump start group meeting, and then after that, it's a peer performance group. But
Nice.
I think the social part of it for us is, I mean, they're honestly can be kind of fun, and they can be scary if somebody brings a problem and they're like frustrated and they're freaking out and they're going to go off a cliff or something. But watching how we straighten that out, everybody learns from problems. It's almost better to have problems in those classes because you can teach people. But just the camaraderie, like we set up in our Google chat, which is like Slack, spaces for each training group, wave one, wave two, wave three. And we keep those going forever. Like don't ever shut them off. And they have this own little private conversation going on the side with that group of 5 or 6 people that's really they're sharing baby pictures and doing stuff and talking about non-work stuff and then getting all into the work and they're asking each other like, it's
A lot of
I think
trust built.
a lot of trust. And that is a huge benefit of a franchise system if it's leveraged properly. And most people don't. That's what happens. That's why one-on-one is so destructive is that you get zero of that benefit. And there's nothing like having a franchisee jump in and correct a fellow franchisee and say what you were going to say, but do it nicer and have 10 times the impact that you would have like that. Like that's Zach, that's a good day when that happens.
Yeah,
Just
100%.
Totally. I'm gonna
yeah.
just throw in a quick disclaimer that that's Thomas's opinion.
Uh,
About the perform we love group coaching and performance group coaching. Sometimes you said this earlier, Thomas, too. Sometimes there's a need for one-on-one, so it's not a blanket.
Oh yeah. Like if you had a
Uh,
problem and you wanted to do a specific thing or you wanted to expand, there was something unique. Like we for sure do one-on-one on that. But as a normal coaching routine, the stuff that you're in on a long-term basis, those are all peer groups for us. Yeah.
yeah, and then I just also since this is a webinar, we're trying to help people understand a little bit more about how we help, just so people know that are listening. We do run performance groups for you, which is what Thomas has started with us, and then eventually brings it in house. So we can talk about how to actually make that work. But if in case anybody's not picking this up, for really for anything to do with creating buy-in around all these things, it's you start with the pilot group, right? Like if it's peer performance, find some that are open-minded to wanting this, start there and then show the results, right? Same with the coaches taking the certification program or whatever, like find the open ones. So okay, we have a ton of awesome questions, so let's see if we can hammer through these. Let's start with the top one. So, real question, because it was after the cat joke. Anyone that wants to answer this, when you started off not implementing all these ideas and are not getting great buy-in, do you recommend resetting expectations with the same team members, with proper new tools and approach, or bringing in fresh people to try and reset? I think all of you used the same people you already had. You were able to do that. Rob, do you want? Looks like you were
We
going to
brought
answer.
some
Yeah,
people in. We did both. Yeah.
Bit of both, Thomas. Okay.
Yeah.
it's a very, if I'm understanding the question, a very layered and important question. And it's hard on these webinars because you can't have a dialogue with whoever asked this. But what
Anonymous.
I would ask is if you're finding that resistance, it's either how you communicated it and guided it, or there's a cultural element. So before I would go like try to get and then move people out of my organization because they're not resonating with this, I would say if they're not resonating with it, there's a cultural dynamic, not some other dynamic to go under the hood on. Absolutely, all of us on this call, we've all been part of it. We've all done it. You're kind of launching something, you think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread, and people are like, this thing stinks. Well, that's because of how you launched it. And we're all guilty of it. Go slow to go fast. Build up the momentum. And again, I shared at the beginning, what worked really well for us was setting up the 3-year goal to be in Franchise Business Review's top 50. Okay, how do I get there? And in my example, I wasn't even the one that brought up AC Inc. Some other people on my team had heard about it and they're like, wait, I've kind of heard about it. They didn't know about it as much as I did. But like, I think that program, then it was their idea.
Hmm.
And then it kind of went from there.
Love that. Okay, so that's we'll go to another one here. Scott, thanks for the compliments. He's saying that his franchisees are loving the performance group we're doing with them. That's Scott from Be Organized. But he also asked about the term business strategy calls. Are some franchisees don't like the word coaching. They feel like coaching is for underperformers. I don't know if Zach, do you have an opinion on that? Do you think is there a way to help franchisees understand what that means, or do you think call it something different?
Yeah, I don't know if it's so much the terminology. I mean, you got coaches at every single level, whether it's, a high performance Super Bowl winning team, they still have coaches. And so I think it has to be more along the lines of the franchisee's perception of what the calls are. So if they've been on a coaching call and they felt like they were just getting consulted and told what they were doing wrong and everything else, obviously they're going to associate that call with a negative call. So if a simple business or terminology change helps kind of maybe recreate the culture, I think that it's definitely a win. But I'm not sure if coaching and that word has any negative connotation to it.
Yeah. But if it does, just talk to the franchisees and help them understand what's in it for them and what it means, I would say. The one last thing I really want to touch on, this has been awesome. It's so fun to get the questions as well. But I want to touch on whether this is just for newer brands or does this work in established brands? I mean, I think I know the answer, but I'm going to pick on Rob because Rob, you've been in a number of different brands of different stages. If somebody has an established brand with maybe 400 or 500 franchisees or 600 and they've got like 10 business coaches, is this doable? How would you, if yes, how would you do it?
I think my methodology would be the same. Like go back to when I was with larger brands. To me, this program is agnostic to size. There's a different rollout because there's just more people and more franchisees, but it's absolutely no different than maybe putting in, you got to put in a new CRM for a 100 unit franchise or a 3,000 unit franchise. You still need the CRM.
Mhm.
Uh, it's just going to be a different rollout plan because of the scope and the size of what you're looking at.
Yeah.
So I think, it's so hard to put something kind of in a corner in a way. But I would say even if you are a large brand, you probably almost want to look at it more
Hmm.
because things are going to have to be so much more systemized at 1,000 units versus me at 100 units. Um, there's no other way than systemizing your support, keeping the relationship, keeping the heart, keeping the culture and the personality for sure. But I would say for a larger brand, if there's a larger brand on here, maybe you're kind of recognizing that your field support is all over the place. I would not in any capacity be nervous about being a larger brand and doing this. It's just another thing to roll out and you won't regret it.
Yeah.
And your field reps won't regret it either.
Yeah, I think
And,
it's
and
yeah, go ahead, Thomas.
yeah, well, I mean, you have a lot more pushback in a larger brand from the staff. Like that's going to be, you got to unlearn a lot of stuff. That could be a real challenge. But actually, I was talking to someone today who's thinking about starting some type of business in Canada, franchise business in Canada as a window franchise. And I said, well, if I were you, I would take the franchise certification class and learn
Hmm.
how to coach And before you even add any franchisees, like what an amazing kind of thing to do as a founder. Like founders get all the blame for all the problems in any system that falters. And I think they're missing some of this institutional knowledge that you guys have done such a good job of standardizing. Like I think just if all of us used a similar playbook, the structure works. Like why do you want to reinvent the wheel? Just learn how to do it right and you'll avoid 80% of the mistakes that people get banged for. Like it's harder to do it at 1,000 units. It's like turning a battleship. You're not nimble at all at that level, but huge
This,
value if you do, you know.
yeah, and this is what we saw was actually the more established the system, the more they need it. Just takes a little longer to implement. So,
Right.
my goodness, you guys, the time has passed. We are at the end. Thomas, look like you're going to say one more thing. Is
No,
it?
I'm good. Thank you for having
Okay.
me. That's fun.
I
Yeah.
just want to thank you guys. I wish we had more time. I wish, yeah, I want to thank the panelists here for sharing, especially for being such incredible ambassadors of what we're doing. We really are trying to change the way people support franchisees so there's more wins overall, unlocking hidden profitability. So if you're listening in and you want to join this group of modern, high-performing brands that really cares about franchisees, but also overall brand growth, then reach out to us at fieldcoachexperts.com. There's a form there, or you can email solutions@fieldcoachexperts.com. So until then, go be awesome.
Awesome!
Thank you.